I'm meteorologist Alana Brophy, and we are talking fire season. Granted, it's early to get into fire season. Utah typically sees fire season amping up late May and into June. But this year, we've melted middle and lower elevation snowpack and already dealt with a grass fire in Davis County. So we know that conditions are dry, and it's never too early to get out some fire reminders when it comes to wildfires in Utah. Starting off, we're looking at our largest wildfires, some of which you probably remember. That Milford Flat Fire back in 2007 burned over 363,000 acres in central and southern Utah. That wildfire still holds the record for Utah's largest, but behind it, the Pole Creek Bald Mountain Fire, which really took off in 2018. It continued to burn with very dry fire fuels and posted up our second spot. Back in 2002, Clay Springs was noteworthy. The Bryan Head Fire in 2017, which ABC4 covered extensively. We watched that fire rip through the canyon and move through a lot of dry brush and forest land, burning over 71,000 acres. And the Dollar Ridge Fire, still recent in many of our memories, takes that fifth spot for Utah's largest wildfires. So these were the big ones, some in recent memory with very dry conditions. Now, we don't have the lineup for what this fire season will bring, but we know these are the large ones and some of them recent. So we have to be extra careful moving into Utah's fire season. And I'm not the only one saying use caution in the early season.
Hi, I'm Kate Webb. I'm the statewide prevention and fire communications coordinator for the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
It is early, but when it comes to fire season, this is really on us, Utah.
About half of all fires in Utah they're human caused, which means that they're preventable. And that's something that the public can directly engage with and help us in preventing, reducing the number of wildfires, especially this season in light of everything going on with the coronavirus. Every wildfire that we can prevent is going to reduce exposure, it's going to reduce response and risk to our first responders.
Now, we are only in April, so it's unusual to talk about fires this early, but we already dealt with a grass fire in Davis County. The Shepherd Canyon fire was short-lived, but woke us up.
It's still a little early to be making fire season predictions. We're going to get a much better picture come May 1st when we get our spring outlook. It's going to be really helpful for us. You know, we've had a decent snowpack, but as you said, fuels are drying out and the snow is melting, so we are rolling into fire season.
We lost that low and mid-elevation snowpack weeks ago, and some fire fuels are already drying out.
As fuels dry out, those lighter fuels like grass that you're talking about, they burn very quickly and they also dry out more quickly. So that's where you're seeing some of those fires now this early season, down south where it's warmer earlier, and then in the lower elevations where that snow is melted and the vegetation is already starting to dry out.
Our rapid warm-up can accelerate high mountain snowpack melt. It's runoff season, folks.
That snowpack directly impacts the moisture in vegetation and how quickly things dry out. So, you know, as that snow melts, vegetation then starts to green up in the spring, and then as it gets hotter, it starts to dry out. And the more dry the vegetation is, you know, the quicker, more likely it is to burn. So it directly impacts what kind of fire behavior and what kind of fire season we'll see. And as I mentioned, come May 1st, we're going to have a really great perspective on that with our spring fire outlook.
So the state is waiting on the outlook, but here's what we do know. Winds are a key player in Utah's fire season. Winds are a critical part of any fire throughout the country. Wildfire winds in Utah can often spread flames. Downslope winds are something we deal with frequently. We're getting those strong upper level winds flowing over our mountains. And in Utah, we have plenty of those and see this happen often. As that wind comes off of the mountain, the colder air at the top will come down. It speeds up off of the mountain and it heads downward. When it does, it really heats up and dries out anything in its path. As that air rushes down the mountain, it means that we are making those fire fuels ripe on the way. We get that warmer air at the valley floor, and those downslope winds can be incredibly strong, and that often means that fire can follow. Any ignition could be particularly bad. So we know that those wildfires really can start, but winds can spread it, especially on our benches and mountain areas. And that's something we have to be careful of as we head into Utah's fire season for 2020.
If you're having a lot of hot and windy periods, so where that vegetation is really dry and then you have high winds, that can really impact the way that fire is moving and how quickly it burns. So a lot of it has to do with the moisture that you're getting, the hot temperatures and how long those hot temperatures prolong for, and then what kind of winds we're getting as well.
And it's not just Utah. California has seen devastating fire seasons in the past as a result of the Santa Ana winds, which I've talked about before. So you've heard about them before, the Santa Ana winds, but why don't they really impact Utah, and what are they? Well, it all starts with high pressure. High pressure is sinking air that has a clockwise flow that sends a northeast wind into California. That wind goes over the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now keep in mind, when wind travels over a mountain, it speeds up. When it comes down the other side of the slope, it dries out very quickly and gets hot. So you've got consistent, hot, gusty winds hitting a specific area, and this level of intensity does not impact the Great Basin. Wind and heat are critical factors for warnings issued by the National Weather Service. During Utah's most accurate forecast, you'll see this in the summer months. It's a red flag warning, and you'll see it throughout fire season. It's a heads up to viewers that fire danger is critical and happening. This week, we saw them in Colorado and New Mexico with extreme heat. But heat is only one of the factors when it comes to a red flag warning. Low relative humidity is incredibly important as well. It means our fire fuels are very, very dry. Grasses dry out quickly, and you're dealing with dry grass as well as brush and trees, and that burns very quickly. Windy conditions play into fire. We know that. It's part of the red flag warning. Gusty winds can easily spread flames, and that is another criteria for this warning. Dry thunderstorms can often trigger fires. That's something to keep in mind, and those fire fuels dry out quickly, and whether it's a lot of them in an area, you'll often see a red flag warning posted by the National Weather Service, and the Pinpoint Weather Team will do everything in its power to make sure you know about it and take extra precautions when you're out and about. So while we may be ahead of the season, you can do your part. Here's a quick recap. The fire season outlook will pop in May, and we now know how and why Utah winds work and impact us. Pay attention to those warnings in the next couple of months, and just make sure you keep wildfire on your mind.
You know, the weather warms up, people are thinking about camping, or right now it's open burn season. A lot of people are burning debris. We are asking people to be responsible, really think about the weather conditions, and also when and where they're having fire, whether it's a campfire or burning debris, for example, thinking about, is it the right place? Is it smart? Do you have a water source and a way to actually handle that?
All right, so as we get ready for fire season, we will see what to expect as we get into May. You heard it from the Division of Fire, Forestry, and Lands, but when it comes down to it, there are some very helpful reminders for fire season to practice now. Make sure that you never leave those campfires unattended. With many of us anxious to get into the backcountry and go camping, you have to remember to put out those fires. Adhere to those burn bans and warnings, which you'll catch here on the ABC4 weather forecast frequently and throughout the summer. Be careful with those cigarettes. Make sure vehicles are not on top of that dry vegetation as we continue to dry out fire fuels heading into our fire season. You want to avoid power tools that can cause any of those sparks and easily ignite anything dry surrounding them, and make sure you obey all of the orders from local officials. Utah's most accurate forecast will keep you on top of fire conditions and the weather associated with it throughout the summer months, so make sure to stay with us.